You turn my morning into dancing. You turn my morning into dancing. Your love changes everything. There's something about your love, something about your love changes everything, changes everything. Something about your love, something about your love changes everything, changes everything. Something about your love, something about your love changes everything, changes everything. Something about your love, something about your love changes everything, changes everything. Something about your love, something about your love changes everything, changes everything. Something about your love, something about your love changes everything. You turn my morning into dancing. 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 'Cause your love changes everything. Your love changes everything. You turn my morning into dancing. You turn my morning into dancing. You turn my morning into dancing. 'Cause your love changes everything. Your love changes everything. Oh, there's something about your love, something about your love changes everything in my body. Oh, something about your love, something about your love changes everything. It changes everything. Something about your love, something about your love changes everything. It changes everything. Something about your love, something about your love changes everything, changes everything. Something about your love, something about your love changes everything. Something about your love, something about your love changes everything, changes everything. Something about your love, something about your love changes everything, changes everything. Something about your love, something about your love changes everything. You turn my morning into dancing. You turn my morning into dancing. You turn my morning into dancing. You turn my morning into dancing.
Good morning, Rooted Men. Pleasure to be with you this morning. Matt Ryan, Firmly Rooted Ministries, joining you on this Friday morning. Oh, looking at the unfinished project of my greenhouse in the backyard. I didn't think that'd be in the frame. Anyway, I'm always starting by talking about the wonder of God's creation, and it's just been so calm and quiet this morning. And this sunrise has this painted sky, and so I thought I'd join you from outside. This is a big day for us as our little girl Reagan, who you no doubt see dancing on Sunday mornings, starts kindergarten this morning. So we're getting her off to the bus a little later on, and lots of excitement there. So I hope that this day has you looking forward to something as well, as I always do. I hope and pray that you've got good things coming, and that you're excited about living this day and embracing this day. So where we left off yesterday here in 1 Corinthians was with the new covenant, right? The Last Supper, right? It's been called a lot of things. The communion meal. And so some of the things that naturally happen, as is so often the case, when you start a new ritual, that ritual, like any other, can become rote. It can become about the ceremony itself, and not as much about the heart. And so we're going to look into that a little bit this morning. So this is Paul, of course, talking to the church in Corinth right after he gives the instructions for the Lord's Supper, right? And this is kind of immediately following it, and kind of that first question. What if I join in the Lord's Supper in an unworthy manner? What a loaded question that can be, right? What's an unworthy manner? Am I unworthy? Well, of course I am. I'm born with sin in me. I'm born with this other identity that falls and is prone to brokenness. So, of course, I alone am unworthy. But when Christ lives in me, it's no longer I who live. Christ, obviously, is the ultimate symbol of worthy. And his atonement brought me into that supper, right? So we want to be careful, especially around the word I, because we want to kind of split that hair and get specific about what it really means. So I can admit that I am born unworthy, yes, but I can also understand that because of my relationship, because of what's been done for me, I am made worthy. But does that mean I'm always going to be? Okay, so this is where we really get down to it, and we talk about that position of the heart, right? So, as always, right, we start with the law. What's the consequence of participating in an unworthy manner? Excuse me. Sinning against the body and the blood of the Lord, a man ought to examine himself before he eats of the bread and drinks of the cup. Examine himself. For those of you who join us for communion at Firmly Rooted, you know that we tend to, as often as possible, have a confessional reading. I'm pretty sure every time. Have a confessional reading before we take the Lord's Supper. And that confessional reading is always admitting, understanding, acknowledging this fact, and getting our heart in line with the fact that it's not us who are worthy, but we are made worthy, right? But like anything else, that can become rote, right? You ever find yourself just standing there reading the words out loud, not thinking about them, not pondering what they mean? That's what Paul's telling us to do here, right? A man ought to examine himself. Am I really thinking about what this reading is saying. Am I really coming with a contrite heart? Am I really genuinely acknowledging my sin? Am I genuinely recognizing the need for atonement, right? Is my heart in the right place? Now that can seem, I guess, daunting, right? And certainly can seem condemning, because I would venture to say that many of you, like me, have probably taken communion before when my heart was in the right place, when I was focused or distracted on something else, when I wasn't ready to give something up, or, if my wife and I were having some argument or something and I was carrying that with me, right? I don't think that condemns us. I think that obviously God understands. But as we grow and become more spiritually mature, we should be striving toward this kind of intentionality, that each and every time we're joining in the Lord's Supper, in this communal meal, we're examining ourselves, right? And then he goes on to talk about, people who are weak and sick and people who have died because of their sins and other things, right? The idea being that living in sin brought sickness upon them. And there's a lot of things in here. But what's really the core message is, historically, the feast or the festival, right? The feast that would adjoin communion or the Lord's Supper was a big party, right? Just like it was at the Last Supper, right? They broke bread and then they ate the meal, right? They had a long period of time where they were reclined and eating and enjoying conversation and all that. And at the end of the meal, they blessed, Jesus blessed the wine. We tend to think of it as all this one quick thing because we do it all together, right? But understand, this was always celebrated as a feast, as a big meal. And the problem was that church in Corinth was that for many people, that had turned into party time. They were celebrating that feast. They were celebrating, yes, their hearts were in the place of celebrating the new covenant, but they were doing it in kind of an improper way that showed where their heart was. First, some of them were overeating, overindulging, and over drinking, right? Giving in to, temptations of the world, right? But more importantly, was that they were all enjoying this feast together and getting fat and happy while people around them were hungry. And they weren't sharing it with anybody. And that's the part that kind of cuts through, right? Their hearts were missing the point. The point is community. The point is coming together. In fact, Paul even talks about you should eat before you come, because the feast should not be to serve you. It shouldn't be all about us. So what does that mean in our practical world? Well, in my mind, it means I'm the last one in line every time we do communion. And I'm not saying I'm doing something great, but I think about that. I don't think we're ever in risk of running out, but if we were, I'd certainly want to make sure that a visitor who came and needed to know this meal and needed to be atoned and needed this spiritual feeding of having this moment got it before I do. Right? That when I'm up there with my family, they all go first. Right? These are the kind of things that it can mean in practice. To make sure everyone else is included means to prioritize them in front of myself. Right? Yes, I need the meal as well. Yes, I need to be in worship and I need to be being fed. But as I mature, I realize it's much more important for me to ensure others are, because I can get it another way throughout the week. I know full well that if we run out, we can go get more, right? And this is the idea, that the whole point was to be in community, to be eating, drinking, sharing this incredible blessing of the body and blood with everyone else around us. Right? It goes back to the Great Commission, go. Right? In Revelation, I will not come until the word has been spoken to every corner of the earth. You get this overarching theme is that this love needs to be spread. It's not for us to hold on to. It's, the kid song, do you hide your candle under a bushel? No, I'm going to let it shine, right? Same idea. It's not just literally the wafers, right? Because you got to think in this time, a loaf of bread was a big deal, right? That could feed a family for a couple days. Right now we eat these little wafers and they're cute and they're flavorless and we have jokes about them and we don't need it because we're taking in several thousand calories a day because that's the life we live. But when that bread's all you got and that wine is all you got, when you're clinging on to Jesus, boy, it changes. It changes what that meal means. When you're acknowledging your desperate need and your reliance, that's a way to kind of get your heart in the right place. So that's all I got. I don't mean to challenge anyone or condemn anyone, but I hope that gets you thinking. Not necessarily about what you do, but where your heart is. We get to do this so often that we forget how special it is to meet our resurrected Lord at the table, that he's joining with us in this meal. And one of the best ways to build community is to break bread together, right? To eat together. Blessings, men. I hope that challenges you and lifts you and maybe helps with help you to make that experience more meaningful as you go through it in the future. I love you all. Let's have a great day and make it a firmly rooted day. May someone see Jesus in us today. Peace.